لسه واحدة بالجو.
This is the second aggression of Israel on the Latakia port. In the previous one, I addressed it here. I said it is a very dangerous precedent because Israel, for the first time, attacked a civilian infrastructure that Syria uses in order to import also goods, including food, medicine, fuel, and other necessities. Just for an argument's sake, imagine if Syria bombed Haifa port. And maybe you can imagine the outrage that you may see or will definitely see in the media and maybe a meeting in the UN Security Council. But when it comes to Syria and to other countries, these countries do not initiate any political pressure on Israel in order to stop its aggressions against Syria, right? But in my opinion, this attack in particular, the second one, is a joint Israeli and American message. And Israel would have not attacked Syria without an American green light here. So the United States and Israel are sending a message that the Caesar Act is still intact. And despite Biden is easing some of the details of the Caesar Act, which is unilateral coercive measures against Syria, sanctions, but they are unhappy with the opening of the relations or restoring the relations between the Arabic countries and Syria. And what they are telling the Arabic countries that even if you are opening your diplomatic channels, restoring the diplomatic channels with Syria, and you want to do trade with Syria, Syria is still unstable. We will still destabilize Syria and you will not be able to do business with Syria. This is the first message that the Americans and the Israelis are sending. The second message is directed towards Iran. As you may know, Iran has an interest in investing in the Latakia port. But when I say investing in the Latakia port, it's similar to the Chinese, for example, investment in the Haifa port, or the American investment in a port in the outside world. This is not a military base. It is an investment of a third country in a port in order to improve the services of this port. And Iran has a big experience in this. So this is also a strike against this project that Israel would not allow for Iran to have a foothold in the Mediterranean through a civil port. So that is why Israel making excuses, although they don't say publicly that we attacked it, but this is the pretext that the justification behind this attack. Now, unlike the previous attacks, the Syrian army didn't engage with the Israeli missiles this time. And the 4 missiles that the F-16s, Israeli F-16s shot, they all reached their destinations and they destroyed many cargoes in the Latakia port, and the devastation was very big. Now, you may ask why the Syrian army didn't engage. So Russia has its own narrative, and one of the spokespersons of the Russian military in Syria, which is located in the Mymoun military base, he said that there was a Russian cargo plane landing at the same time when the attack happened in Al Mymoun military base, which is 30 kilometers away from the Latakia port. And that is why the Syrian army didn't use its air defenses against these missiles. Now, if you ask me, this is a ridiculous and a pathetic excuse. And excuse me for my terminologies, but you cannot tell this excuse to even a 3-year-old kid, because you are, as a Russian army in Syria, you are sending 2 messages by this statement. One, you're saying that the air defenses of the Syrian army are very old and they are incapable of differentiating between an enemy and a friend. And these air defenses are Russian and developed by Russia. And we are not giving a newer air defenses to Syria, which is a defensive weapon. And you may ask, if this is true, then why Russia is not giving more sophisticated weaponry to Syria, well knowing that Russia delivered the S-300 to Syria, right? So we are in front of two scenarios. One, the S-300 aren't installed, which is not true. They are installed. Or two, Russia is not allowing Syria to use the S-300. I don't know. The second message that Russia sent by this ridiculous statement is that the Russian air defenses are worthless. Don't buy my Russian air defenses. I mean, what kind of excuse is that? If you are giving the Syrian army a Panzer S-1 or S-300, of course they are able to differentiate between an enemy and the foe. So Syria has the S-200, and correct me if I'm wrong, the S-200 is a thermal missile, so it follows the fire of the airplane or the warplane. And if there were two planes flying at the same direction, maybe it misses the target. I'm just saying maybe, I don't know. I'm not 100% sure, but this is how I think it works, the S-200. But even the S-200, in my opinion, they were developed and upgraded by the Syrian engineers in order to overcome this obstacle. But let's suppose the S-200 are too old for this, so Syria has the Panzer S-1, which when you shoot, it locks on the target and it follows the target. It doesn't miss the target. It doesn't go to another target. The same way is the S-300. It also locks on the target and it follows the target all the way and it doesn't miss it. And it doesn't go and maneuver into another target, for example. So these excuses are ridiculous and in my opinion, they're untrue. They're not true at all. What is the real reason? I can't really tell. I'm not a military expert, but to be honest, Syrians should not expect military help from Russia when it is about Israel. It's pretty obvious that Russia doesn't want to help Syria in this regard. And it is also not interested to do that because they also want for Iran to have a less of an influence and leverage in Syria, so they have more. Maybe they want to invest in the Latakia port the same way they are investing in the Tartus port. Maybe they also have an interest to keep Iran away from the Mediterranean. I'm just saying maybe, I don't know. But this excuse in any way, it's very ridiculous. Now, the Russian intervention, of course, it was very beneficial. It was crucial, especially when it came in late 2015. It had very big successes and help for Syria. I'm not denying that at all. I'm just saying right now what's happening. So between 2015 and 2018, Russia helped Syria, especially in Aleppo, in Palmyra, in the suburbs of Damascus, and mainly in Al-Ghouta, but also failed in other areas, for example, in Idlib. Why the Russians are blocking till now the Syrian army operation in Idlib against Al-Qaeda and other terrorists? Why is this maneuvering? Why is this appeasement to Turkey, which is occupying Idlib and occupying the north, occupying Azaz? It has a belt there and it's Turkifying the area, it's building schools, they are making the people feel they are Turkish, they're using the Turkish lira, the Turkish curriculum and everything. It's a failure for Russia there. It's also a failure in the east, where the Americans are occupying that area under the umbrella of the so-called Syrian Democratic Forces, who are the Kurdish militias, separatists. And now these separatists, they have preconditions to start negotiating with the Syrian government. And on top of that is They want to change the constitution of Syria and make it a federal system, which is something I address it many times on Syriana analysis. You can go back to my old videos. It's an Israeli project to federalize Syria on ethnic and religious basis. So when you see these successes of the Russia and some of the failures of Russia, you ask yourself, what's the mission of Russia right now in Syria? What are they doing at the moment in Syria? Now, I want to address this from a legal perspective. For example, any foreign military presence in any third countries, it's conditioned with few factors, to be honest. And one of them is that the UN Security Council under Article 42 should give a permission to a country or a group of countries to intervene in a third country in order to restore peace and stability. This is not the case in Syria, it happened in other places. The other factor or condition is that the authority, the legitimate authority in any country, the government calls and invites a foreign army to come and deploy its forces in its country and help them against any foreign threat or internal insurgency, etc. And this happened in the case of Syria. But in this factor, there is also a sub-factor which is very important and the Russians should be careful and cautious of, which is the popular acceptance. The popular mood in Syria in 2015 till 2020, it was very positive towards Russia. It was very positive. It has positive sentiments, right? Millions of people accepted and cheered and celebrated the Russian intervention because mainly it was against the terrorists. But now the Syrians are asking questions. What's the role of Russia? Why Russia isn't helping Syria when it comes to the Israeli airstrikes? And I'm not saying Russia should provide, for example, offensive weapons. I'm just asking for defensive measures, deterrence. I mean, it is not possible that Israel can bomb the Latakia port without any deterrence. If Israel can bomb the Latakia port, it can bomb the Ministry of Information, it can bomb the Ministry of Foreign Affairs, it can bomb the parliament. It is a vital sector, it is a vital, very important port. So, especially now after these attacks, and this is my job to tell you the truth and what I am sensing on social media and what the people write on social media. The mood is shifting against Russia. The people are angry and mad on Russia. And when I say the people, those are the pro-Assad, pro-government and pro-Russia people. Russia should be careful of this and cautious of this, because without popular acceptance, its presence in Syria will not be welcomed. They will not find the same welcoming. And if this continues the same way, maybe in a few years, the people start considering it an occupation force. So this is also my job to tell you what may happen in the future, because I can read and I can listen what Syrians say on social media platforms. So this popular acceptance is rapidly vanishing. And because of the Russian appeasement to the US in the east, and to Israel in the sky, and to Turkey in Idlib and the north. That's why I wanted to make this video in order to elaborate on and to tell you what exactly happened and why it happened and what's the role of Russia in this regard. This is the last video of Syriana analysis in 2021. I wanted to post it on the last day. I wish you a new year full of joy and successes. And for the people who suffered a lot in the past years, I wish them a year with less pain and less suffering, especially to the people of Syria. But most importantly, if you have a voice and you are courageous, I urge you and encourage you to be active and speak and write and try to make a change. Try to make change in your circle of people that you know and this circle will go and go. We have to be a messenger. We have to be more active and less passive in politics, because even if you are not interested in politics, politics is always interested in you. I've been your host, Georg Almasian of Syriana Analysis. If you're new, please consider subscribing and hit the like button. It really helps me with the algorithm of YouTube. And if you want to support Syriana Analysis financially, you can become a patron. Link in the description below. I wish you a very, very happy New Year.